Conquer the Noise is a podcast produced by Unconquered, an independent agency challenging brand perspective through redefined content. This podcast is dedicated to telling stories of outstanding ideas and people who have found their way amongst the chatter. Hi, everybody. This is Jonathan Hansen, Chief Creative Officer at Unconquered, and I'm your host of Cultivating Purpose and Passion in Business. In this episode, we speak with Kat Nouri, who is founder of Stasher, maker of reusable silicone bags. We had a very energetic conversation, but we did run into a few technical issues where phone dropped, we lost signal, we went in and out. So you may notice on the final record that you're listening to today that there may be a few hiccups in there or bumps in the editing. We did our best to make it as smooth as possible for you. I loved this conversation. She was full of energy. We basically, as soon as we got on our call, just jumped right in. So there's not really a formal introduction outside of what you're hearing here. Despite the interruptions, we were able to pick up right where we left off. And I hope you enjoy. I would love to start jumping in, if you don't mind. Talking
totally.
through, I would love to hear you have 3 kids at home, you're living in the Bay Area. We've already alluded that technology is difficult. How are you managing living at home and life and everything?
Yeah, for me, it's actually been such a treat. And although we have all the challenges with what's going on in the world, and there's quite a bit of madness in every direction, I tend to be such an optimist in general in life that I try to look on the brighter side of. I've started, a couple of businesses in the last 15 years, and I've barely had any time at home. So for me, it's been kind of my kids actually are now 18, 21, and 22. Mm-hmm. So they're actually asking me, "Why are you at home?" Mm-hmm. And I'm like, I thought you guys wanted me to be home. So it was kind of nice to see that they actually didn't want me home all this time. Mm-hmm. They really, I found that it's a time of reflection, and it's been really nice to catch up with my kids, and I get a second chance to sort of have input in their lives. And so for me, it's been a real blessing.
And so you've been in the Bay Area your whole life, right? Or
I grew up in Iran, and I moved here when I was 10 years old. And so just kind of related to what's going on in the world right now. People ask me all the time, well, how does it feel with the civil unrest, and how does it feel with challenging times? I think immigrants are kind of used to that. Uh-huh. So for immigrants, it's not as hard, I think, sometimes because we have experienced a lot in the past. I remember as a child when we first moved here, my mom, as a woman who was super active and really motivated in her career and her education, was one of the first women to go to university with her friends. And so those kinds of milestones and things that you had to earn a much more difficult way already existed in my DNA. So mm-hmm. I think for me, challenging times are really time of growth. I think they're good.
Well, especially as an entrepreneur, you're kind of always faced with challenging times when you're starting up a business. And you have a lot of experience at that. But I couldn't imagine. I
just kind of think as an entrepreneur, you just kind of go, what else is next? What's going on right now with small businesses is just it's really, really difficult. And, it goes back to all those things about how sustainability goes all the way across, not just the way we treat our planet, but also how we grow our businesses. If you're, going from paycheck to paycheck, or you're growing your business on raising money or going into debt, it's not a sustainable way, and you can't drive your own vision that way. And so all of those things that everybody has, maybe you've gotten out of it where you've gotten away with raising money and being okay at the end of the day, and your partners were great. But for the most part, when you take money from the outside and you don't drive the vision of the company, you don't hire the kind of people you want to have within the company to, especially if you're a mission-based business, then you're really seeing the effects of it. So I think it makes everybody question the way that they've built their business too.
Yeah, I can definitely see that. I would love to touch on your culture a little bit. Like I always get super excited talking to Persians because Persian food is probably my favorite cuisine there is.
You just like the bottom of the rice, the tahdig, right?
The tahdig is the best part.
Right.
And the horesh,
It's
the stews are
amazing.
my favorite. The kebabs are amazing.
Yeah.
And my best friend growing up, I met when I was 13. He's still like my brother to me.
Yeah.
He's Iranian. So I've had a small glimpse into Persian culture, Iranian life. Practically lived at his house. His parents are like
Yeah.
my second set of parents.
We have the same thing here. I mean, our door is constantly open and people are constantly being fed. And they always laugh that, all Italian, Jewish, and Persian families are kind of like the same. It's like, you're not hungry? Okay, so here's some more.
Yeah,
So we're
here's more.
always feeding people. So,
Yeah.
and I think that exuded actually the company and the way our layout is at Stasher is very much like that. We have a kitchen filled with organic food, and
Uh-huh.
food is probably the number one thing that we all congregate around and have a lot of passion. And I would say most of the people at our company are foodies.
Yeah. And so your mother was a nutritionist, is that
My
correct?
mom is a PhD in nutrition, and she's a Qigong master and a Buddhist.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, so I grew up with a very spiritual upbringing,
Uh-huh.
which sort of extends to the whole reason of why I have a mission-based business. It's in my DNA.
Yeah.
And sort of like questioning what's in your food and the products that you use and what's in your everyday life has been a big part of why I started Stasher as the first, reusable option that really works, that people have really latched onto.
Yeah, and it sounds like you have a little bit of a rebellious spirit in some ways, and maybe even your mother does. Just
Oh yeah.
knowing the conservative culture of Iran and her going to university,
Yeah.
it sounds like you've really embraced that yourself.
Yeah. Questioning the status quo is a part of my DNA. And I'm actually super excited by what I'm seeing on TV and what's going on in the state of the world right now, because change comes with turmoil sometimes. And
Uh-huh,
if
it does.
things are not, if they're all the same and they're all working, nobody questions what's going on. And there's so much in front of our eyes that we need to open our eyes to. The
Mm-hmm.
systematic things that are going on that nobody's questioning, it's really time for our country to be going in that direction. So I'm super excited about it.
Yeah, we were originally scheduled to talk. It was right after or right around the time that George Floyd was actually killed. So we pushed back. We pushed back our conversation a few weeks, which I appreciate. Um, and now we're seeing that, like, I think part of going back to that conversation earlier about sustainability. I think our culture hit a point where it's unsustainable to continue the way we're going, and
Absolutely.
the people hitting the streets, protesting, demanding more equal justice across the board,
Very
is a
timely.
result of, yeah, is very timely and a real testament to how we've been living an unsustainable life. um,
I think the difference
Sustainability.
is now that through social media, it just gives people a whole different ability to be able to spread the message. And I
Hmm.
think that with a whole new generation that questions everything, this is the time for where nobody gets away with anything. And I
Yeah.
love that. And that comes back to companies too, like, being held accountable for um, the culture of your company, what you're providing, the inequality, the leadership, whatever it is that's within your company that you need to question. I
Hmm.
think we've been given the opportunity to embrace those.
And so thinking through that, like what does social responsibility and sustainability, what do those mean for you?
Yeah, and that's a big question, right?
Hmm.
When you're a mission-based business, when I say you're a mission-based business, I mean, I created the company because I wanted an alternative to single-use plastic. Plastic waste is eating up at our planet. And
Hmm.
if our planet's dead, there's no business to be had.
Hmm.
And I'm very much into karma. How do you sort of put back into the system what you're taking from it? And our planet's going to spit up at us if we don't take care of it. And for me, sustainability is first and foremost taking care of Mother Earth as it's taking care of us, and as
Mm-hmm.
it's feeding us. And on the other side, extending that to your own community, and then your own community extending that to the company that you're running and the people that are within that company.
Mm-hmm.
We've built the culture of our company from the inside out, like truly from the inside out. If you say you're a sustainable company, it's because the people that are within your company completely live and breathe the mission of your company, because we live in the Silicon Valley pretty much. They have a choice to be anywhere they want to, because when you're hiring top talent, it's not the money that they're after necessarily. It's not the
Mm-hmm.
promotions, and it's really like having their own personal values sit with the mission of the company, and they will bleed for you. You will have this engine that just pumps away like you could never imagine. So that has taken over, I think, some of those other things that maybe some large companies would be able to beat you if you were in a competitive game of starting a company. Authenticity is at the core of that. It's not just a word anymore, because if you don't walk the walk and you don't exude what you're saying every day through your own team, and they're not putting it out there, and then it's not coming back through your community, it's kind of a full
Mm-hmm.
cycle. It's not transparent, and you can tell, and they'll call you out, because we're so lucky to have a generation that is no nonsense, and they will
Mm-hmm.
absolutely call you on your game. So I think we're really lucky that this is a time where everybody has to really be real.
Yeah, well, I think the internet is really, and social media, but internet specifically, is really giving people an opportunity to have a voice, by having connections across the world with people, and having a platform to speak on. Like inside Stasher, how are you nurturing that community and that culture? So I think that's one of those great mysteries of business ownership. As one who owns a business as
Yeah.
well, how do you nurture culture? How do you, you know, like foster an environment where people feel like they can speak and share and not be ostracized for their opinions?
Yeah, I would say that, I'm not, I don't really like to micromanage people, and I don't like to hire people that need to be led all the time. So I
Yeah.
tend to hire leaders, and I always say to myself too, I even laugh with them, that I hire all these people that are naysayers, like, nope, don't do it this way, do it that way. I mean, they will call you on your game all day long.
Yeah.
If you surround yourself by people that just follow you around because they think that you're the one with the vision and you do everything right, you really don't have, and I think that's where diversity comes in. If you
Mm-hmm.
don't have diversity within a company, so I'm a brown woman that's a minority that's leading a company, I think just that is a given, that there is a place for everybody to have a say. And if anything, for us, it's probably, I would say we're 85% women in the company.
Mm-hmm.
So I really like intentionally made sure that I wanted to work in a place, and I wanted to create a company where more people that don't have a voice, and they have the ability to grow and progress, and to be able to have a bigger outlet into their world, and to feel like they have a say in the way we drive the company.
Yeah.
So I think that that's a big part of it, is hiring people that are completely diverse in that pool, and having a whole bunch of people that have different voices, so that when you're sitting in a circle, you're never getting a bunch of people that are all agreeing together. And I think that's when you have innovation.
Mm-hmm.
So,
Yeah,
so
I
we thrive
I
on
agree
that.
with that. Yeah, I agree with that 100%. Um, you know, how does that change now with COVID? I mean, I hate to use that as like a
I'm
vocal
kind
point,
of
but I'm always
sad
curious
about
about
that.
remote. Yeah, I'm always really curious
Yeah,
about
I'm kind
remote
of sad about
teams.
that. Yeah, we're all big huggers, and we like to get together in the kitchen. We like to have taco trucks outside. I mean, we have bands in the yard. All those things. I mean, we like to go to the bars together and hang out,
Hmm.
and we're a really touchy-lovey group of people, and it's just fun to be there. And I had talked to a couple of people some of them are introverts, and I had asked them, and it was really funny because I found them telling me that they just miss being next to their, we've got like people like, one of the guys, Todd, he makes cookies for us all the time, and,
Hmm.
trades recipes, and, we all bring in our dogs, like all those things that we love about being together is missing. And I think that the sad thing about that is like, it's just like having a personal relationship. Like, no matter how rough things are, you can kind of go up to someone and just kind of say, hey, I wasn't cool with that, and say, and I just want to tell you that because I care for you. And that kind of thing on a personal level is so much easier than sending someone a friggin' email or like a text. And it just doesn't sound the same, or getting on a Zoom. So I think a lot of that is difficult to replace. So we do have a Allison, who is our cultural leader within the company.
Hmm.
Um, Her job is happiness, basically, is what she was hired for. Is she helps everybody sort of like, so she's still doing yoga, where she's coordinating yoga. Monica, the gal in our, with our design team, she's amazing. So we've got like a lot of talent that kind of stimulates us still through Zoom. And we do all kinds of like cool, funny things. They do like these, they're trying to, what's that game where they're trying to find stuff in their house and they bring it to show on Zoom?
Like show and tell.
I know, like, it's like a sort of like, I can't remember, like, what is that called? Like, everybody's trying, like, they say, who has this or whatever, everybody goes and looks for it and they bring it. And then we try
Okay.
to see who has
Okay.
the most sustainable option available. So it's
Uh-huh.
kind of like related to what we do. And we're trying to see like if everybody has a better suggestion, or we trade recipes and things like that. So we're trying to do the best we can with the Zoom thing. But I can't wait till we go back to the office, and we have a beautiful office. Like, we've got a living wall, and it's really fun. Everybody's got bean bags they throw themselves on. It's just
Uh-huh.
really nice in the neighborhood to walk around. So I can't wait till we're all back together.
Yeah, I know some of the things we struggle with is like some of the things you pointed out too is in digital communication, there's a lot of nuance that's lost. So
Yeah.
like being able to understand what someone's saying, because there's so much body language that you pick up on when you're talking with someone. And also I think like when you have those moments where the conversation is more open and you're just stopping by, it evolves naturally into something else and can lead to
Yeah.
some like really great creative ideas.
Yeah.
Um, and that's just, and as a creative agency, it's something how do you replace that?
Well, I do think looking on the bright positive side of it, though, there are so many people that like live in Petaluma, and they were driving like 2 hours of their day to come to work. So that sort of thing has, I think, it's allowed them to have more time with their family. And I think a
Hmm.
lot of people are kind of like, we need to change the way we work actually going forward, because I don't think it works for everyone to have to be in the office all the time. So I think this is a good opportunity to really, I think great things are going to come out of this, because we can mix it up so that it allows people to have a more of a work-life balance. Because I think work-life balance brings, it actually provides you better employees that are happier.
100%. 100%.
So I think there are good things to walk away, and I don't think business will ever be the same. So I'm really excited about that.
Yeah, I am too. I love how, because going back to the rebel spirit in you, I love how it challenged the going the office culture. Because you're right, there is a lot of
Yeah.
benefits to it, but I don't think the old ways of doing things are necessarily the right ways or necessarily the best ways.
Yeah.
And this gives us an opportunity to sort of explore that, I think,
Yeah.
and try new things to see what innovate. Um, Over the last like I don't know 4 years or so, Stasher's really grown, and congrats on
You
that
think?
success. That's
Yeah, it's
amazing.
been pretty crazy. So we were the fastest private growing business in the Bay Area last year, and that's a
It's
huge
amazing.
thing to say when you've got
Yeah,
Silicon Valley here.
yeah.
And again, I'm actually, one of the things that I'm a little bit saddened about is that last year, or right before COVID, we absolutely disrupted the industry for reusables. And we came up with a product that completely revolutionized the way people think about a reusable product that is very lifestyle driven, that can inspire people to do the right thing in an easy way that's sustainable for their family without really
Mm-hmm.
giving anything up. And actually they were saving money and they were feeling good about what they were doing because they know only 9% of all plastics are recycled. They know that our oceans are in trouble. They know that the world is in trouble. By 2050, there'll be more plastic. You've heard that, right? There'll be more plastic in the oceans than fish.
Yeah.
It's awful. So I think when we were growing so fast at quadruple, growth year over year, and we have this huge following of people, and we built our business on direct to consumer, so which is a huge blessing for us even in these times where we
Yeah.
continue to grow. I'm a little bit saddened that we've taken a step back when it comes to the plastic free movement a little bit because of how much single use plastic is being used for the whole crisis right now.
I agree.
People are using gloves and throwing them away. People are using masks and throwing them away. So I'm confident that we can all champion a way to make people mindful of the things that they're using because of safety at this time, which is very
Yeah.
understandable. Because we also had to pivot from our Save What Matters program. We had a campaign for Save What Matters, and it was directly related to the environment. And then we had to pivot and say, we have to save our people first, right? So if you don't have people on the planet, how are you going to save the planet? So those are just and then we started working with No Kid Hungry, where kids aren't getting fed at schools. And so giving back, which we're a huge, part of the 1% for the Planet movement by Yvonne Chouinard in Patagonia, supporting NGOs that work on the ground, activists that have the ability through Surfrider and Five Gyres and so forth to make sure that the plastic-free movement is going forward. But also we're working with No Kid Hungry to make sure that through the crisis, we're supporting something that's very immediate. So we're not sort of like pulling over those blinders and saying, okay, it's plastic-free movement all day long, and we're not really looking at what's going out in the world because we need people to champion it. So we got to get everybody back on track to refocus and say, okay, COVID is going away at some point, but all the damage that we're causing right now with COVID is something that we need to be mindful of. So it doesn't have to be either or. We can be mindful of our habits, and nobody's perfect. And sometimes we do have to grab those gloves and those masks, but we need to think a little bit further about how do we discard those, and are there programs for picking those up or recycling those? So we definitely all need to think a little bit more about what we're doing right now currently with the situation.
Mm-hmm. The Save What Matters program, I haven't heard too much about that. In my research before going into this conversation, I was definitely looking up, and the same with the school lunch. Those aren't necessarily things you've been really advertising a lot about. I would love to hear about those programs.
Yeah, so Save What Matters is basically, it has sort of a double meaning in that, you're saving your food, you're saving things that are going to get thrown away, you're saving time, you're saving money, you're saving the planet from plastics. At the same time, when we pivoted, it was more like saving your community, parents that are going to work or not dropping off their children at school, and they're lower income and their kids are not getting the meals. How are they being supported? So we're sort of like looking at the more immediate needs. And I love our amazing marketing team came up with the Save What Matters program. And again, we have, a group of super talented people that tend to think on their feet, and they're constantly switching as fast as they can. When the thing happened with the civil rights movement and things that are happening in the streets, again, where you're in the midst of building your campaigns and so forth. And we want to be mindful and thoughtful, and all of us are learning language. How do you speak to a topic that, comes up that should, and you have not been discussing as a team? So we're all being challenged in so many good ways. And we're having all kinds of training around that now. And we're, sort of asking internally, are we not, what voices are not being heard? What are we not doing that are correct? So I would say we're a very active company, and every time something comes up, I'm really happy to say that we really do hit it head on to make sure that the resources are provided, to make sure that we're spearheading it as opposed to following it.
Well, I definitely think the success you've had so far is a reflection of where people are and culturally, and that they want change. They want to see better options. I look at Stasher as a special products, and I think it answers a need that people didn't necessarily think or know they had.
Yeah.
We've become so reliant on plastic use. It's in everything that we forget about it so easily that until you are aware of the damage that it's causing, does it not become an issue?
I think it really hit home when China stopped picking up our
Exactly.
garbage. When things start backing up and you're thinking, okay, what's going to happen? Where is all of this going? So I think consumption is something that, I love. I'm a huge Yvon Chouinard fan. And consumption is not okay like that. You have to be reusing, and refusing is huge. And we stand behind that all day long. We want you to have a product that lasts you forever. And if it has an end of life, we want to give you an opportunity to make sure it's discarded mindfully, not discarded into our planet, into our oceans. So those are all things that we've really thought through. And I think more and more companies need to do that. 40% of all plastic waste is in packaging. There's no reason why all packaging is not biodegradable. I mean, there's just no reason. And that's, I think, the first step, besides like discarding single-use plastics. It's like, how do you look at the current packaging? And there are so many different coalitions that are around. My friends at Numi have a coalition that's all around packaging that is completely biodegradable, that goes away. So those are things that we need to think about more and more, as opposed to like them being an afterthought.
So your experience before Stashers kind of helps really set you up for what you're doing now. You worked in silicone, so I would love to hear what the bags are made of, what makes that material so unique, and how you got to that place, because I think that's a really interesting story in itself.
Yeah, I think first and foremost that I kind of wanted to, I was, as I mentioned, my mom's a nutritionist, and she is, being just someone who is not very much into consumption, and she's not she's really mindful of food waste and what you store your food in and so forth, and what you freeze it in, what you cook in. She flagged that down for us very early on as kids, where we were not a throwaway family. And for me, it was something that I started really noticing as I had children, and seeing how my consumption around single-use plastic was awful. And it really, as my kids started growing and I started sending them out with lunches and so forth, and I saw them coming back with a pile of garbage, I started thinking, well, there has to be a way that I can sort of contribute to coming up with something that's a better, more functional product than something that you throw away. So I wanted to come up with something that was really sturdy, that would basically sort of like replace your everyday single baggies that are out in the marketplace. And I thought, well, how can I come up with something that's more sturdy, that can withstand the heat? And I started working on that because I had a company that was all about 15 years ago. I was thinking, how can I come up with an alternative for tabletop and baby and kids products? Because that's where I was. I was a mom at home, that was entertaining, and I had kids, and I wanted to come up with better products for my kids. And so then they started going to school, and I started thinking, wow, this has a much wider audience than products that are a little bit more esoteric and a more higher priced, that not everybody can afford. And I wanted there to be a more liberated reach for people, so that everybody had access to something that was an alternative to single-use plastic. So I wanted to come up with something that was like your traditional baggie, and I could not come up with a closure that worked. And after many hundreds of iterations of trying to make that happen, I was finally able to come up with a closure that actually worked, that was super functional. And I had an amazing team, fantastic engineers that believed in me and pushed through with that. So again, it comes down to my team. I'm the visionary, and I had people that believed in my vision and helped me bring that to fruition. Once we came up with the concept, I wasn't sure if there was actually a market for a silicone bag that was reusable. And once I got to the marketplace and I saw that obviously, from day one, people like Container Stores and Sur La Table and you name it. I mean, we were like a rocket from day one.
Yeah.
Nobody's seen growth like that within year one. And I have to like really brag about this, like to be a profitable company that grew so fast, and that didn't take hardly any outside money is unheard of. So I think those are all things that really not only made the product sustainable, it made the business model sustainable.
Mm-hmm. I think one of the hard parts, we alluded to it earlier about entrepreneurship and starting something new, is failure, and really embracing failure. And that,
And lots of those.
yeah, we all do.
Yeah.
And especially nurturing a culture in your office where failure is acceptable.
Yeah.
I would love to hear like how failure has been actually an asset for you.
Yeah.
So I know there's always some like self-reflection that goes into it, and always some sort of, I think, acceptance of it. But, for everyone, it's different.
I think that, by the way, that's such a great question, because everybody always wants to know what you did right. And I think it's actually, I was always the person that wanted to see what somebody did wrong or something they failed in, because it's so easy to learn and listen and to be more mindful of what other people have done to carve that path for you. You don't have to burn your finger to know that, something's hot. So, I think early on, I found out, just being a woman and trying to get an SBA loan, I found out that funding is not accessible to small businesses. And that was something that I should really be mindful of. And cash flow was king. So I watched a lot of businesses around me that were my friends' businesses that pretty much got depleted quite quickly because of cash flow issues. Myself, through my first business, Modern Twist, I learned probably most of my hardship through that first business that I have had for 15 years, that showed me, again, who leads your company with you. Your team is everything. Not having cash at the end of the day, not having the right talent on the team that you can't delegate to. Those are all the things that I learned pretty early on. I also learned how to be a better leader by kind of trying to, help myself, like I'm a huge podcast and a reader of like books and so forth about business and how you can fail, and how it's okay for you to fail, and show your employees that it's okay. Because if you're in such a safe environment and everybody does the right thing, everybody's going to be afraid to fail. And most of innovation comes out of failing and then reiterating it and doing it the right way, right? So I think allowing failure and letting people know that that you're going to be graceful if they fail, and that there's a small price to pay for that for the whole team. And when you make a mistake with something, and everybody looks around them to see if that person made a mistake, what happened as a consequence of it. You have to be graceful, and you have to make sure, even though you're like, oh my God, you just release the shipment of $50,000 to an international customer without getting paid. And you have no way of retracting that money. And how do you sort of not panic and not let the employee panic, and just kind of be graceful to be like, okay, we got this. We'll see how we can retract the money, or, that's just like a small example of something that could happen. And you're sort of trying not to freak out, because maybe it's your last $50,000 that you have in the bank, and it could have just gone out the door because somebody's not going to pay you. So I think allowing people to fail with something to catch them where they don't feel like they're going to pay a huge consequence for it is really important, because then it allows them to be innovative as they go forward with other things that they will fail in, that will equal to innovation.
Yeah. And I think persistence is really a big part of that. Just keeping at it, taking, you got to have thick skin. we do a lot of mentoring at Unconquered with younger people, and who are trying to get into the creative industry or getting out of school and looking for some sort of guidance. And when people say they want to get into the creative worlds or own their own business, some of the first advice I give is always like be able to take criticism and pull out the nuggets, because everyone has opinions. Everyone's going to be always very vocal to share them with you, but there's only a few of them that necessarily you need to actually like hold on to and carry. And I think there's a whole lesson in just knowing when to listen.
Yeah,
during those
completely.
moments.
Oh my gosh. And listening is huge, right? I mean, I always talk about this because my CFO and we used to go on all these, like in all these meetings, looking for money. And oops, I lost you for a second. And can you hear me?
I gotcha.
Okay, dropped out. And my CFO and I always laugh about how we were so lucky that nobody had give us money. And one of the people that we actually hit hard, and he was the nicest guy, but I mean, he turned around and said to us at the end of the day, "Do you really expect me to invest in your science project?" And it's become one of the best stories that I have carried with me, because the investor pretty much laughed at us and said that Stasher was a science project. And not only would he not give us any money, but does he expect us to, in this thing that is just, something that somebody would throw away, that he would invest in. And that sat with me in that everybody has a different perception of what your concept is. And if it doesn't sit with the person you're trying to get funding from, don't push it. That person is not seeing your vision. And at the beginning, you need to be listening more and more to see what value that person brings. And if they're going to be a sore, naysayer on the side of the thorn on your side as you're growing the company, and instead of being a mentor for you, why would you even want to bring in that negative energy? So I think it's kind of, listen. And when you get a no, take it as a blessing. And I know it's hard to always think that the glass, is full as opposed to empty. But surround yourself by people that champion you and your vision. And you only need a couple of those. You don't need the whole world to think that, what you're doing is amazing. You just need a couple of people that will push you forward. And that's what I have to say about that. It's just, surround yourself with people that help you with those learning lessons.
I was just jumping in here because I was starting to say that, going into what you were saying as far as making sure people are aligned with your values and you're on the same pages. We set up sort of a 10 I guess 10-point manifesto or guidelines to help us in our decision making with people who we work with, because I think those things have to align and have to connect, or else one, the work suffers, and the two, it becomes miserable to work with them. But ultimately, I think what it boils down is you have to like the people you work with, and it's really simple. And I think staying within that idea of doing it for the right reasons, right?
Well, I think that's why for us it's so much easier to do that, right? When you're a mission-driven company to begin with, and your whole goal is to have impact, and you're built for that, you're going to automatically kind of get the people, that are completely passionate about that. And it's, again, it's their DNA and it's your DNA, and you're all in a room with a bunch of passionate people that are change makers. So it's very different than, sort of being I don't know. I don't think you start at scratch where you're I don't know who you are, and I don't know what kind of leadership you need, or you kind of get people that to begin with are complete badasses, and they're self-motivated, super opinionated. They're there for a reason, and they chose to be there for that reason.
Yeah.
As long as you have that's how you choose people, as opposed to just what kind of education have they had, or what kind of experience do they bring to the table. I think first and foremost, you bring them in because of their passion for the cause, and that's going to drive it so much further than anything else. And I think with you guys, I mean, you're sharing stories that will help other entrepreneurs. And I'm going to go back to Yvon Chouinard and say, the movies that he's making right now, about hatcheries and, what's going on with our planet, and he's funding movies. That storytelling will go so far. So you guys are doing that as it's a huge service, especially in a time like this where people need to be connected. So my hat's off to you guys. And I can tell that you have a super passionate team along your side.
Yeah, we do. And that's what we look for. We look for some of those similar, I think, characteristics that you speak to is self-motivated, passionate. We were speaking a little bit about just failure. We were speaking to, finding team members that share similar values and everything. And I want to kind of merge those ideas a bit and talk to how you, when your team members do fail, and right now when there's a lot of external stresses, how are you dealing with keeping like spirits and morale up?
I think that everybody's shifted their expectations a little bit, and I think that's the right thing to do with leadership. Honestly, we're still doing very well, and we're growing really nicely. So are we still doing the quadruple numbers that we want? I would say that the plastic-free movement has not completely gone away, and the people that are passionate about doing the right thing and building up on that and passing it on to their families and friends are still very much passionate about doing that. So the focus has been, it's really not been on performance of the team, honestly. It's been more like on the times and how are we there for each other. So I don't think anybody's failing on our team at all. I mean, I think, and if failing on our team is seen in a different way. Yep. We see it as opportunity to see how we can provide training, or a good leader always takes it upon themselves if something goes wrong. I'm not going to say anything about that. I might get political. I'm going to bite my tongue on that one. But that's what you do, right? You basically say, how can I change the way I've done something so that you are provided with what you need? It's because I have failed you in some way. So I think that's, as long as you have that sort of approach to something, then you're going to be okay. And your team's not afraid of that. So I think for us, it's been more like the challenges of the times and how do we better ourselves and how do we do, that 1% better every day.
Yeah, I'm glad you brought up the 1% better. We're a member of 1% for the Planet as well.
Yay!
I love the organization. I was there in Portland at the event last year.
That's where I saw you too.
Okay. I remember seeing you there as well. Like I have my stasher bag still from that event.
Did you see? Do you remember Katie, our brand director that was on stage?
I do.
Yeah.
And I love that idea of being 1% better. And the idea of the 1%, the donation platform of how a little can add up to so much. For us, we're constantly, I think every year we're reevaluating where we can improve. And even more so right now, just because the nature of the first 6 months of this year has been. So I would love to hear what you're doing to be 1% better, what the company's doing. You can speak. I think that's one of those great things that you can speak to it personally, or you can speak to it from a company standpoint.
I think on a personal level, being 1% better, I'm an older generation than my kids. My kids are a tough bunch. So you couldn't possibly be doing all the right things because they're thinking completely outside of the bag. They are rebels. They're out there marching. There's not one thing they're not questioning. So I can be 1%. I can be 10% better because generationally, I think they are better than I am. I think they question the status quo even 10 times harder than I ever have. And I'm pretty rebellious. So I think that's one thing, is educating myself on how I can have a better, more enlightened view of how, as simple as what I've been taught at school in my history books, is that, is what you have studied and what you believe in, and to open your mind to what the actual truth and reality is in life and in society, and how can we better serve for equality, equity in every way than we are right now. So those are the things that I'm challenging myself with. And I live in Oakland. So, and I on purpose have always wanted to live in Oakland because of the diversity that's here. And I can tell you, it is a piece of heaven. I'm going to go and say it's a piece of heaven.
I love the Bay Area. It's beautiful. I was there last July, and it had been a few years since I had visited. And I remembered what, it was just a reminder of why I love it so much there.
Completely. I mean, it's just like, again, it's so diverse. I mean, this is my Oakland right here.
Yeah. It's beautiful.
I mean, it's gorgeous, right? You've got like nature and, there's so much in culture and amazing people and different music. And, so it's a place that we really have thrived and our children have thrived. And I wish like every corner of the world could be a little piece of Oakland. So I'm a huge advocate of, I think you guys have a lot of that in Brooklyn as well. Where you've got the artist community and you've got that rebellious nature of people that are constantly coming up with creative foods and music, and they are always pushing the envelope.
Yeah, I think, and I'll put myself on the spot with that same question and speak to that a bit. I think just being asking myself why all the time. Why am I doing this? Why do I feel this way? Why do I think that's one of the ways I challenge myself to be 1% better. That universal question, which I think can just peel back the layers of everything, and was also probably the question my parents hated to hear, because being the rebel I was as a kid was, well, why? Just I said no. Well, why? Just you can kind of knock down any conversation or any sort of blanket statement about something by really examining it.
And by the way, that's our employees too. Our employees are constantly why? And I have to say that's our strength. Yeah. Our strength is that we ask why.
Yeah. And I think you said it earlier, when you have a team of, people just saying yes and agreeing with you, I think it does you in your business such a disservice.
Yeah, completely.
And when I look at the responses from some of the larger corporations after, or I should say after, but during the whole new push for social equality, you can kind of see that lagging. You can see that who's really, I think, speaking from the heart and actually questioning things and actually is analyzing their actions in themselves, and those that are just saying, really, you're just talking the talk,
Yeah. And I think that everyone's seeing that it's good business to do, it's good to do business in a good way. So I think when it hits everybody's pocket, they really realize that society demands it, your consumer demands it. So doing the right thing by your business is probably like the best thing you could ever do. I mean, it's a full cycle, right?
And I know, like, a lot of the conversations we were having with our clients and amongst ourselves were around like how do we talk to our customers? How do we talk to our clients? This isn't a time to be selling.
Everybody paused, right?
Yeah, everyone's paused. Everyone's having their own experience and being mindful of that. And you spoke earlier to your marketing efforts and how you've been able to pivot a bit on some of your initiatives. What were some of those conversations like internally that you're having around marketing, selling, and being there for your customers?
Yeah, I think that's a great question. And again, we're not perfect either. We had a moment of reflection. You have to pause. Your empathetic and your sympathy for your community has to be real.
for us, because we are built that way internally, where it's a diverse group of people internally, the conversations are actually more probably, they're a lot more, what's the word for it?
Like inclusive,
alive, and
yeah.
because of the kinds of people that we hire. So I would say that we're so lucky that we get that internally, and we can do that amongst ourselves, and then to have time to sort of discuss it and see what are the best ways to go forward, not just for our own company, but also for our community, and then for society as a whole. So I think everybody's had to pivot and pause and see how they're doing it internally. And again, we're not perfect at all by any means, but where we are really good at is saying that we're not perfect and that we are willing to learn every day. And that's all anybody can do. And that comes with the same thing as the plastic-free movement. You're not going to do it perfectly all the time, and you are going to feel bad about some of the things that you do. But if you can do one thing good every day and add those up, that's what you're looking for, that 1% better.
And I think that it makes it feel less overwhelming when you can acknowledge that you don't have to be perfect in every single action that you do, which speaks to intention, and just having that, I think, intention to do right and to do good is really important.
Absolutely. So, by the way, going back to the summit that I probably saw you at, I cannot wait. I mean, this one, I was supposed to be on the panel this year, and it was canceled. So
I know
it was like a month ago, and I was so excited. I actually have a picture of me and Yvonne that I'll send you. That was really cool. I had the fortune of getting to speak to him for a little while, and God, just the most honest, straightforward. Were you not impressed by him?
Oh, I was. And so I had a really interesting experience. How I was introduced to 1% for the Planet was actually at a really small gathering in New York at the Soho House, where he was speaking on behalf, and there's only maybe 5 people in the audience. It was like a Monday morning at like 8 o'clock.
Oh, you're so lucky.
So no one was there. And
he was probably there because he's a fisherman and he gets up so early.
Yeah, well, I don't think there's really good fishing in the Hudson River, so I think we're safe there.
That's right.
But
unfortunately,
yeah, no, I wouldn't want to eat anything out of that river.
No.
But he was very inspiring, and it was really the motivation to get involved with 1% and to continue to get involved and support it.
I think it's more of the community that we have. Like, just you saying that makes me feel closer to you guys, because your intention is so there. I mean, 1% of your total is a lot, and it's not enough at the same time. So for me, it's like every company, there's no reason why companies, it almost should be a form of obligation. It should be built into the DNA of the company that you run, that what you do goes back into the community in one way or another. If you're profitable, your profit should be able to support your community. And we're learning, as you see, if your community is not healthy, nobody's healthy. It doesn't matter how you think you're separate from your community or you're separate from your environment. Everybody's affected by it. So until we all start thinking that we're all in it together, which has become the slogan that everybody's sort of saying, we really all are all in it together, because one thing goes wrong, it hits everybody, and we're seeing the results of that. So how do we become more compassionate about who we are as a community? And we're so lucky because we're in the 1% community. And every time we get together, or whenever we do something that's a special occasion, or we want to support a brand, it's always with our 1% folks that we work with. And it feels like you're hanging out with your brothers and sisters because they're mission driven.
Yeah, there's a shared value immediately. And that's one of the things I've really come to appreciate about the organization as well, is, getting to be able to connect. Exactly. And speaking to, I know it's New York City, the constant
That's right.
sirens.
By the way, that was one of the things that deterred me from leaving the woods here. And
oh man, it's actually quiet right now because of COVID. The city streets are practically empty. So now that it's starting to pick up, you're starting to hear more and more and more sirens. But yeah, so as we wrap up, Kat, I would love to just maybe hear one final thought from you, and I would want to direct it more at some of the entrepreneurs who are starting businesses right now, or entrepreneurs who are in the early stages of starting their business. Advice on maybe how they can set up a value-driven business. I know it can kind of sound easy in that, oh, you really like this, you really like that, but I think there's more to it, and so. How people can set up a foundation to give back, and how can they set up something that is just, do that word again, sustainable, and so it keeps on going.
Yeah. I was actually listening to my girlfriend, Kelly McElhaney, who's a professor at Haas. And she was speaking about how in a time like this, when people are laying off folks or their companies are not doing well, at the end of the day, are you going to be the villain, or are you going to be someone? It's not what happens to you, it's what you did with it. Mm-hmm. So those are some of the things that I really encourage companies that are in trouble. And if they do have to part with employees, or that they just always put themselves on the other side, and humanity first before profit. I mean, even if you have to, it's just, I hate to say, even if you have to go in the hole, that you're talking about families that have to survive through this. Be compassionate, put yourself in their place, take care of the people that have supported you. As I mentioned to you, I'm a big karma person. If we take care of each other at the end of the day, we will all be okay. But if we all just look out for ourselves, nobody's going to be okay. And I think a part of what's happened and why it's escalated so much is because certain groups just look out after themselves. So if we can, in leadership, own our mistakes and lead with pride and take care of everybody else that comes with us, I think we're all going to be good. On the point of smaller businesses and how do they handle, and how do they sort of like have a foundation that can help them go forward in a strong way? Again, your pillar should always be the mission and the intention of your business, the kinds of people that are supporting that business. Those things should not change for you. Those things are the things that will protect you and guide you through the roughest times. So sort of counting your blessings of the people that are around you. When hard things happen, make sure that you are thinking of that in a less selfish way in many ways, because things will be okay again. We will all go through this, but how did we show up as leaders? How did we show up as people that need to be there for other people? And how are we there for our communities? So I think right now is a time where our communities need us. Like, just get out of your own funk of your head of, oh my gosh, the kids are at home and they're driving me crazy, or I'm with this person 24/7, and am I going to be able to go out to dinner? Those things are kind of ridiculous. I know we all miss it, and we're all so spoiled in so many ways, but so many people in other countries don't even have any of those things that we have in the first place. So maybe it's a time of empathy to look at all of those things that we're spoiled by, and to be a little bit more humbled by what's going on. So that's what I would say, is take those lessons and do something with them. And once we go back to whatever normalcy looks like in the future, that we walk away with lessons, as opposed to just thinking, phew, we go on our way doing the same old thing. I think that would be a shame.
Well, I think that's beautifully said. And I'm gonna end it there. I think that's a great note to end on. So, Kat, thank you so much.
Thanks so much for having me.
Yeah,
and I
really
can't wait
appreciate
to
your time.
see you at the next summit.
Yes, I will definitely be there. I think they're going to do it in New York, or in California again next year. I think they're coming to New York as well.
Oh, I'll be in either one, and I'm so looking forward to meeting you. Thank you so much for the great storytelling and putting our stories out there.
Oh, thank you, Kat. Appreciate it. Once again, thank you everyone for joining us today. I hope you enjoyed the conversation with Kat. I found her rebelliousness and energy quite contagious, and I hope you carry that over into your work week. Thank you again to Kat for joining us. Please rate and listen to us on Apple or Spotify. You can subscribe. If you have any feedback or show ideas, please email us at hi@weareunconquered.co. Thanks.